And then right off the hop, there was a bit of a moderator spat, if you noticed. As they were introducing themselves, the one anchor on the left, she introduces herself, right? And she goes, I'm such and such, such and such. And here we are at the fucking presidential debate 2024, vice presidential debate 2024. Yeah. She's yammering on, introducing herself and introducing the guests, the candidates, right? J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. She neglects to introduce her co-host.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time. I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate.
So her co-host is just like standing there like, finally she goes, and I'm such and such. She chimes in, and I'm such and such. And you could just see the distraught look in her face. And after that, she looked like she was on the verge of tears. Because like at first she had a real phony fucking fake news smile. She's all just like, but then when they neglected to introduce her, she was all like, she looked like she was about to start crying. Fake news, right? Pardon me. And again, it can be an embarrassing moment when you're on camera, and it's a kind of embarrassing. Like, as you can see, I got a bit of a cut, cut myself shaving the other day, and, I got a bit of a cut. So, it's a little embarrassing. Got a bandage. So I can guess it would be embarrassing. You're in front of the nation and they neglect, your company, your news company. You're a news anchor and your company neglects to introduce you, her co-anchor, whatever. Little moderator spat. So then it was a potential 3-on-1. It was starting to shape up like a potential 3-on-1. At one point, one of the ladies was like, she tried to fact check J.D. Vance. She's like, he said something about how the border, the Mexico border, U.S.-Mexico border is just a free-for-all. Come on in, whoever, whenever, however, come on in, right? Free-for-all at the border, U.S.-Mexico. And he was talking about how like drugs and fentanyl and human trafficking and all sorts of shit's coming across the border, and how there are drug mules. Children are being used as drug mules. And after he said that, the moderator turns to Tim Walz and goes, "All right, Governor, do you want to respond to that children are being used as drug mules?"
Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember, when she came into office, she said she was going to do this.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of the specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children? Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop.
It's like, hey, what the hell's going on here? Is this 3-on-1? Let Tampon Tim is a big boy. He's a big boy. Let Tampon Tim speak for himself. You don't have to fucking cue him up. Hey, you just were insulted. Your potential boss's whole credibility was just insulted. Do you want to say something? Like, you don't have to clue him in. If he's too dumb to know when he's being insulted, let him just stand there. Tampon Tim. Right? But slowly, I think they were coming along to J.D. Vance, right? Because he was very eloquent, like I said, looking real approachable and personable. Slice of Americana, boy next door, apple pie with that navy blue pink tie combo. Big old baby blues just bouncing around. You know, he's like talking to the ladies, answering their questions. And slowly but surely, I can see them bitches just be looking at him, right? Like, You know, they're still like throttled with the chokehold of feminism. But like a part of them was kind of like, you could see that their heart was starting to melt. Them frozen bitches were starting to thaw out a little bit, right? Because they're just like looking at J.D. Vance and they're just like, I could see the wheels in their head spinning, right? Oh, that's what a real man looks like, huh? Damn you, are you still single? I mean, so when it comes to the border, I saw them eyeing him up, right? So it's like, that's a good sign for like the nation. Like, I think a lot of personable qualities were coming out in this J.D. Vance that I think the American people were no doubt seeing up against Tampon Tim there. Oh yeah, and Vance had a very good, one very good line. He had several good lines, but one that really stood out was when he was talking about homes, the creation of homes, and what are they going to do to build more homes, and what are they going to do to solve the housing crisis. And they were talking about illegal immigrants and things along those nature. And they were saying, oh, why are you blaming the illegal immigrants for the housing crisis? And why are you so hard on immigrants? And J.D. Vance said something very sharp. He goes, I'm not blaming immigrants. I'm blaming Kamala Harris, for her, neglect of the border.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with, but the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Just letting all these random undocumented criminals, essentially, coming from prisons, coming from S-hole countries, A-hole countries, the whole thing, just pour into the country undocumented. And they're taking away much needed resources from the American people. So he's like, I'm not blaming immigrants. I'm blaming the Kamala Harris, the border czar. So that was a good line from J.D. Vance in regards to homes, building of homes, and immigration and the border. Oh, and to sum it up, the closing speech.
Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Waltz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you.
Dominant while respectful, which I think is very appealing in politics. You want a politician who's dominant yet respectful. Someone who's like, they're not a pushover and they make their points and they're taking charge, but they're building a bridge. They can work bipartisan. They can work with other parties, and they can work with world leaders. So I think that J.D. Vance definitely demonstrated that. It was an interesting feng shui the way he did it, because like I said, he was very confident and forceful, but respectful. Yeah. Oh yeah, and he stood up a couple times on one thing too, when he, I think I already mentioned it, but when the moderators tried to fact check him.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn now to the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora. Thank you, Margaret.
He said, no, please. You said there was going to be no fact checking. You're fact checking me. So let me explain, please. And then he explained. Never lost it. Was always cool, calm, collected. And at the end of the debate, his wife came, took his hand. They shook hands with Tim Walz. They shook hands with the moderators. That was a wrap. Excellent job. Yeah. Vice Presidential Debate 2024. Hallelujah.
Since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. Fact check, 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 fact check.